All right, hi everyone. My name is Chris Millering. I am the communication specialist for Clarion West. Clarion West, if you don't already know, is an organization that forges new voices in science fiction and fantasy by providing exceptional educational opportunities to writers at the beginning of their careers. We run a 6-week workshop that is very well known and has helped over 600 writers get started on their careers. Right now, we are running the workshop. It's in week 4. We are also in week 4 of our yearly Write-a-thon, which is our yearly fundraiser. It's our one big fundraiser. And we would love your help. If you're watching this and have not yet sponsored the writer, you can go to clarionwest.org/write-a-thon and find out all about the write-a-thon and everything that's awesome about it, and read some fantastic excerpts by our over 200 writers. We also have, if you're local to Seattle, we have readings going on every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. This week will be Charlie Jane Anders at the University Bookstore in the University District of Seattle. Next week after that is John Crowley at the Downtown Seattle Public Library. We're hoping for a big turnout, so if you are local, we would love you to come down. And now I'm going to introduce our guest, who is Randy Henderson. Randy is a local Seattle writer who won the Writers of the Future Grand Prize this year. He's also got a new book coming out that he'll be talking about called Finn Fancy Necromancy. So I'm actually going to switch over to you, Randy. There we go. And so I'd love it if you could introduce yourself. Where are you from? What do you write? What's your connection with Clarion West?
All right. Well, this is going to be on the internet, which means it'll be immortalized forever. So, so I guess I will just speak to future generations. First, let me say that I am in what is called a hotel room. This is not my decor or typical decor of a 21st century person. Mine is actually much tackier than this. I live on what you will call the North American islands, in an area called the Pacific Northwest. And I write what are called stories. Focusing mostly on speculative fiction, science fiction, fantasy, and they're kind of like your thought transfers, but they're completely made up, generally speaking, and sometimes feature Sasquatches. So that's basically
Nice.
that's who I am.
Um,
Oh, and my connection to Clarion West is I attended it in 2009, and have since participated and will be an instructor in, I believe it's 2023. So
hey, I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that year.
right, yeah. We'll see.
And just for the interest of full disclosure, Randy's actually a classmate of mine. We were both in the class of 09. So, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, yeah, 09, go.
Hey, we're an awesome class. Quiet, but awesome.
Yes.
So, tell me a little bit how you got started in writing. Did you start young? Were you a little bit older? What was your start?
Yeah, I started young. It started someone came to the school ground, passing around jokes, and just to see who came back for more. I got hooked on the jokes. I admit, it was pretty sad. Next thing you know, I'm hustling for funny stories because the jokes just weren't enough anymore. Started going from that to like more serious stories, just to get by, and then around 15 I started to write stories, and just because I just needed to feel that high of communication and entertainment and sharing my vision with people, and I've been pretty much strung out on story writing ever since, unfortunately. But it's my struggle, something I've been working through. It's a day by day thing. Yeah, but you know, and I sometimes think, wow, you know, I wish I'd you know been serious about my writing. I mean, I've been writing kind of since I was 15, but it was sort of, you know, I wasn't really serious about it. It was more kind of a hobbyish, and or I like to say that I was a writer, but I'd write like a couple stories a year or something like that. And I sometimes will look back and say, oh, I wish I'd gotten serious about it younger. But you know, but I guess then I would not have gained the life experience that allows me to write what I write now. And you know, Gene Wolfe started when he was 50, and he seems to be doing all right. So if you didn't start writing when you were younger, don't let that discourage you or stress you out. Just if you want to write, and you will be a writer.
Yes, and now you're the one who's giving the first taste is free jokes at the playground.
That's right. Yes. No, I do not. I do not corrupt young children with stories. I tried writing in middle grade, but it wasn't quite. Maybe in the future I will corrupt young minds.
So what led you to attend Clarion West? You know, how did you find out about it? What did you know?
Yeah, I can't remember how I found out about it exactly. It's sort of you know, just chatting with other writers and through various you know, paying attention to writing community stuff. You'd hear about it, and it seemed like a pretty neat thing. So when I did finally decide to get serious about my writing, you know, I was sort of, my creative energies were split in many directions. I was trying to write and paint and draw and do comics and game design and wanted to learn music and everything, right? I wanted to do everything. And I finally, you know, decided I needed to focus on one thing at a time, or at least a couple things at a time. And so I got serious about writing, and Clarion West seemed like a great way to sort of really get to the next level on that. So
Yeah, and okay. So, like I mentioned before, you recently won the Writers of the Future Grand Prize, which is a pretty big deal in our world. Tell us a little bit about that story and how it came to be.
Okay, well, kind of similar to Clarion West. I mean, it was just kind of common wisdom that you submit to Writers of the Future, and especially early on, a lot of my stories tended to be really long, 9, 10, 11,000 word stories, and there's not a lot of places that you can send a story that long. But you know, and there was common wisdom that, you know, they had extremely high pay, high exposure. I really wasn't paying too much attention to the Scientology side of things. You know, there was just common wisdom that there was a firewall between it and Scientology, and that, you know, I mean, the judges, the instructors, the winners are not involved in it, and it's really just about the writing. And it was sort of those, you know, I might as well. I didn't expect to win, but it's, you know, I've already sent it over here, I might as well send it here as well. And I got these things called honorable mentions, and I figured those were like attendance awards when you're in elementary. They just don't want anyone not feel special. So they give, you know, but actually, in actuality, not everyone gets one of those. I later learned that, you know, so it's pretty cool. They actually give you a little certificate and stuff. It's more like getting a personalized rejection, I think. Like, you know, if you've been submitting to markets for a while, you get lots and lots of form rejections, and when you do a handwritten rejection or note from an editor, it's like it's almost as good as getting published in some cases. It's like, yes. So honorable mentions, and I finally a story that I was pretty positive was going to win, and it did nothing. I didn't even get an honorable mention on it, and I was crushed, and I said, forget you guys, and I didn't submit for a while, and then I was getting one of the nice things about Writers of the Future, and by the way, I mean, I had a positive experience, and I'm saying some positive things. But if anyone has any questions about Writers of the Future, you know, or you know, once or concerns about it, feel free to communicate with me, and I will happily discuss things with you. But you know, and my viewpoints on things. But overall, I mean, I had a positive experience, and the I lost my train of thought, but the point is that Uh, oh yeah, yeah. So I submitted a story to them finally that won because I was almost pro'd out basically, which means that one of the nice that's what I was saying. The nice things about the contest is that it it's you cannot submit to the contest after you've had a certain number of professional publication credits, and that means that if the contest supports new and emerging writers. There's a lot of anthologies and contests and stuff out there that are just completely open, and a lot of times the more established writers consistently win those things, and so it's hard to find things that are this high profile, this much pay that give a boost to new and emerging writers. So I think it's a positive thing from that perspective.
Yeah, and something that's worth mentioning is that the submission process is entirely anonymous. You don't have your name anywhere on the story.
Right. Yeah. So that's good. Yeah, it's a blind submission process, so they're not. There's not a chance of them. Still, but it's still. This is where I'll say it's still subject to
Yes.
like any market. They're looking for certain types of stories, and so you want to write to the market, and of course it's subject to the judge's particular tastes, and so I think that but looking at the anthology and the winners, they do publish a pretty good range of stories of different genres and styles and subjects from many different authors. I think 3 of the 4 first place winners in my year were women, and that kind of thing. So it's not there's a little bit of it's as fair as it can be. And if anything, I would advocate for maybe greater diversity among the judges themselves. More women, more persons of color, LGBT representation. But beyond that, I think it's as fair as it can be.
So what was it like to win this huge award? Is it totally overwhelming? What was I saw a picture of you in a tux, which I didn't think I would ever see a picture of you in a tux. So I'm curious about this.
Probably expected me to wear a tux T-shirt. Yeah, it was a pretty amazing experience, no doubt about it. I like to say, the Writers of the Future prepares you for the level of fame you will never actually have as a writer. They threw a big. It's kind of an Oscars style award ceremony, and you have to put on a tuxedo or a ball gown depending on your mood that day, and get up on stage and accept a giant lucite award, and then during the contest they announce a grand prize winner. You don't know who the grand prize winner is going to be, and I won, and that was a pretty amazing experience. They recommend that you give a 30-minute or 30-second acceptance speech for your acceptance speeches, thanking everyone. And so for my initial speech, I gave like a 5-minute speech on the power of story to allow us to experience other people's perspectives and the importance of diversity in genre fiction. I wanted to use the platform that I had and the opportunity I had to try and do that, and so it came to the grand prize, and I got up and I really didn't have much left to say, but I said thank you, and I was kind of a little stunned and out of it, and crying in a very manly way, of course, and
very manly.
Very manly, and then led from the stage, and so there was this period where I had to go and sign anthologies with all the other writers for all the people who had attended there. And just getting from the stage to the area where we were doing the signing was not a very long walk, but it took me like 25 minutes or something like that, because everyone was wanted to have their picture with me and give me hugs and have me sign things and have me sign, have me sign things, and it was a total rock star moment and something obviously that I will remember for the rest of my life. And so that was cool. I got my literally 15 minutes of fame. It was a nice experience.
And just as a side note, if anyone wants to see the speech that Randy gave, I believe it is linked off of his blog. It's randyhenderson.com, yes?
.com, yeah. So there's a dash in between Randy I don't know who has randyhenderson.com, but they're not me, and don't let them fool.
There's a rogue Randy Henderson out there somewhere.
There's actually another author, Randy Henderson, who's also he's also an author, and it kind of seems to be following my progression in terms of success as a writer, and but writes Christian fiction. So that's going to be an interesting overlap when we people start to confuse the two of us, but.
Okay. Well, and that leads into the next question, which
okay,
is
all right.
The book you have coming out, which is I read an early version of it. It's definitely not Christian fiction. It's called Finn Fancy Necromancy. So tell me, where did that book start? What was the seed for it? And actually, why don't you talk about a little bit about what it's about as well?
Sure. Okay. Well, it's a quirky, I guess, contemporary fantasy. I would say urban fantasy, but more in the style of and stuff like that. But a bit Dresden Files and as well, the more current term of urban fantasy. Anyway, it Dresden Files meets Arrested Development. That's how I was describing it for a while. That was kind of the seed concept one. It's about a young man who's exiled, young necromancer who's exiled from our world in 1986 for a crime he didn't commit, and like the 18, and is returning now 25 years later to our world and is immediately framed for another murder and has to clear his name. So there's lots of 80s pop cultural stuff in there. But there's also, and humor. He has a snarky sense of humor, which is his defense mechanism, of course. But there's also lots of seriousness stuff, and there's fun stuff, and dark stuff, and lots of family stuff, and there's stuff. There's stuff. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I should have a log line for that one. But I had spent the previous about 4 years working on a couple of other novels that were set in Second World, other cultures. They were the first books of epic fantasy like trilogies, and so there was a ton of research, a ton of world building, multiple points of view, really complex plotting out over 3 books, and especially in the second one, which was going to be set in sort of a Persian Second World. A lot of research on ancient Persia, on Iranian culture, and other things that I really didn't, I wanted to make sure I got right, and did well, and I wrote that one as a YA. I ended up writing it as a YA because I thought the idea lent itself, and frankly because YA was very popular. I walked into Barnes and Nobles one day. That first day I walked into Barnes and Nobles, and the fantasy and science fiction section had been pushed back to make room for the giant adult section. Was oh wow, great. So anyway, that might have had a small influence on it. I don't know. But I tried to write YA. It didn't really, and it wasn't my natural bent. So it was difficult, and and I went. Yeah, someone just texted me some bad news. Sorry. Yeah. So I was pretty burned out. I was very burned out on that, and discouraged. And I was just like, I just want to write something fun. I wanted to get back to just sort of, the things that made me love, like that I used to love reading, and that made me want to be a writer in the first place. Just some fun fantasy, adventure-y stuff. And so so that's what I just started writing. I didn't have a plot in mind. I didn't have anything. I was much more pantsing it, and once I started rolling, I did start to outline more because I like to know where I'm going, just to make sure I don't get halfway into a novel and then realize I have nowhere to go. But it was much more of a just having fun novel, and I think that's part of the reason that it was successful is because I was just writing to things that I know and love. It's set in a little seaside town, Port Townsend, that I love. This little artsy community with Victorian buildings and quirky features, and it has Sasquatches and mobster gnomes and other fun things. So I just had.
So are you planning on staying in sort of that urban fantasy genre, or are you wanting to work outside of it, or?
You know what? I had planned to kill the character off in a like a 5 book arc, and my editor said no.
Aw.
No, that's fine. I love Finn. I mean, you know, I plotted out up to about I have about 12 books kind of in my mind outlined, not fully plotted, but I know kind of generally speaking what will be in them, and then we'll see if it survives that long. But no, you know, it wasn't my first. My first love is epic fantasy, and I tend to I had written the first chapter of I took some of the Persian world building and magic system, and I'm outlining a much darker, grittier, epic fantasy series that I will be hopefully in the next couple of years starting to write in parallel with the Finn books. Once I kind of get the rhythm of writing on deadline and figure out my schedule and stuff like that, then I'm hoping to basically 2 books or write them in parallel or maybe alternate years. My editor hasn't heard this yet, so just FYI. At some point, go back and forth between the Finn books or urban fantasy and epic fantasy. So.
And I guess that answers the question of what you're working on right now is probably the next book of the Finn series?
Yes, I'm writing book 2 right now. And, you know, and this is kind of one of the interesting things, too. I started off just kind of pantsing it and having fun with it. And I threw in Sasquatches, I threw in gnomes, I threw in these fake creatures and stuff. But one of the things about fantasy is it needs to be internally consistent. Your magic system needs to be internally consistent. Otherwise, you just have Deus Ex Machinas all over the place. You need to have, you know, and I'm just too. I just need to understand things. Like anytime I set something like second world fantasy, even I have to understand how could humans have developed in this other world that are exactly like us or have cultures similar to ours. So I'll inevitably have to come up with some transplant theory, how they were transplanted from our world or something like that. I just cannot, in my own disbelief enough to just create a second world with a pseudo Persian culture or pseudo, you know, medieval European culture or whatever. But so in this case, you know, I had created these wacky this world of fun magic and creatures, but I needed structure for it, and so I started creating the sort of the social hierarchies and political hierarchies and the economic system between the different races and how things worked and you know how each benefited from the other and needed the other and which was developed somewhat over the course of the first book. Just because development in the second book, it's coming out a lot more. I'm starting to play more into some of the political tensions between the groups and the socio-economic tensions and the racial tensions and those kinds of things. So it's I don't even remember what your original question was, but that's the answer.
It was a good answer. It was a good answer. That was that was the what are you working on now question.
Sure. Oh yeah. That's what I'm working on. Book 2, which is so funny. It's basically in book. Basically, he decides to kind of start and he's trying to find a mate for a Sasquatch, which is one of the, or at least that's kind of the precipitating event. But it kind of goes towards preventing all-out war from there. But as these things happen, you know, love and war,
yes,
they're always inextricable.
Absolutely. So one of your great strengths as a writer is you can balance humor with character development. Can you talk about writing humor, where it's easy and where it's hard, and how you make humor serve character development?
Oh, wow. Thanks. Well, I guess it depends on the story that you're telling. You know, if it's a first-person story, obviously I think the humor often comes out of the voice of the character who's narrating the story, or their perspective. If it's third person, it can also, through the dialogue and thoughts of the people, it can be, their humor. And then if you stick in omniscient viewpoints, a la, Douglas Adams or Terry Pratchett, etc., where the narrator's actual humor comes through a lot more in those cases. And I think so. Depending on what you're writing and how you're writing it, the humor needs to serve the story in any of those cases. It needs to. You can't try and write. The way I use humor mostly, like in my novels, is it's not Douglas Adams or Terry Pratchett. It's not all out just wackiness and humor. There's actually a real serious. There's a lot of it's a mystery story at its core. It's an adventure, or dark the quarry, and there's there's family. There's explores issues of family and belonging and identity and other things, and the humor is there to balance that. So it's not just it's not all serious and stuff. The humor is there to make it fun and to break those up, just the way that you want to break up action and dialogue and other things. I use humor in that same way as a sort of to balance out the story and make it entertaining and not so heavy on the heart or on the mind. But there you can also try to write comedy, write Douglas Adams, Terry Pratchett. They kind of already filled those niches, but you can try to write actual, or something that's even more, purely comical. Frequently, I think the difficulty there is that you're essentially telling a really long joke, and people get the joke and some people don't, and people get the joke and some people don't, and so that's where if you can write purely comical stuff, but it's much more subjective and much more. If you're writing a fun adventure story or a mystery story or something like that has humor in it, they can and I didn't really enjoy the humor, it didn't really work for me, but I really enjoyed the story. I really cared about the characters. I was surprised by the ending and really liked it. And the humor didn't really work for me, but whatever. But if your entire story is hinging on them liking the humor, then you're in a little more trouble, perhaps. Yeah.
If you're writing Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the long jokes don't work for you, you're in real serious trouble.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Or if you're the type of person who goes, no, that doesn't make sense. Just choosing not to hit the ground is not how you still wouldn't fly. The physics just aren't there. If you're that type of person, no, you will not enjoy it.
Yeah. Although I would say that Terry Pratchett in particular has a lot of stuff going on other than the humor.
Yes. He does. And I think more so as he evolved through.
Yeah.
Like the earlier world books were closer to Douglas Adams, but yeah, I agree. Yes. Yes. Indeed. Sure.
So I know you've been revising Finn Fancy.
Mm-hmm.
What's your process for revising an entire novel? And are you one of those folks who likes revising, or one of those folks who does not?
Revising from the perspective of, well, I finished something, so that's good. I think I think kind of there are layers of revision. As I'm writing, I'm the type of person who I'll sit down. When I sit down to write today, I will go back and kind of read over what I wrote yesterday, and I will inevitably kind of revise it a bit as I go. So it's kind of this iterative process of revision as I write, and then once I'm done with the complete thing, and then as I'm writing, of course, I will introduce some concept or character, or some character will become more prominent, or I'll this would be cool here, and I realize I need to actually kind of set that up earlier in the I hadn't planned on doing that, and so I will insert notes at the points where I need to bring that out or set it up, or if I don't know yet where exactly to set it up, I'll just put notes at the beginning of the novel, but I will not go back and, generally speaking, try and rewrite the beginning of the novel at that point, or earlier chapters. And and I do occasionally, if I'm humming along, I will occasionally do like, XX insert simile here or something like that, or insert description here. If I'm really just, if it's going to bog me down and I would have to think about it or go research it, or whatever. The important thing for me is to get the words on the page and keep going when I'm in the flow and have the time. Once I'm done, then I go and I look at it as a whole. I look at the ending and make sure, and then I go back and revise the beginning to make sure it sets up the ending, and sets up the expectation of what the book is. By the time you get to the end of the book, you know your characters better, you know where the book is going and what the surprises are, what you want to be surprises, so you can go back and kind of reverse engineer and from the beginning, so that it's consistent, so that the character is consistent at the beginning with who they ended up being at the end, although obviously not the same, because you want your character to have a journey through the story, so you want it to be consistent in terms of voice and their abilities, those types of things, but you want your character actually, whatever is their flaw or need that they have to overcome for their internal character arc to succeed at the end, you want them to start at the opposite place at the beginning, those kinds of things. So a lot of times some of that stuff I'll enhance or pluck out in revision, bringing out the character arc more, redesigning some of the challenges they face to more focus on that character arc and that type of thing. And then I give it to people to read, and they tell me how awesome it is. They give feedback, and then I let it for a month or so, and then I go through and do another pass at it with fresher eyes and revision, and it just kind of goes along like that.
Cool.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
It's
And having having people able to actually read your work and give critique on it is really, really important. I have to say, I didn't know until I attended Clarion was just how much I was missing of that.
Yeah, it's a good critique group is worth a lot of somethings.
Worth their weight in something.
Clever simile here. Yes. I will go back and revision on this Hangout and come up with something very clever right there.
There you go. I tend to leave myself notes that say, "Make this more awesome."
Exactly. Yeah.
So do you prefer writing longer stuff, or do you actually prefer writing short novels, short stuff, not novels?
I like a beginning or emerging writer. Short stories are, I think, one step back. So there's a lot of, some people will say, oh, you need to write short stories to sort of build your resume, as it were, or and a presence and establish yourself as a writer before so it'll make it easier to sell novels or write novels or whatever. And I don't think that's necessarily true. You can just start off writing novels. What I think short stories do for you is they allow you to practice your craft, practice beginning, middle, ends to and arcs to complete things. They give you little incentives, or reinforcements, positive reinforcements, because you have finished something and you can start submitting it and feel good about that. And but they also allow you, a novel is an investment. It's a year or two of time spent on the same characters in the same world in the same genre, the same story. Whereas short stories, you can explore all different types of characters, different worlds, different genres, different voices, first person, third person, and play around with all those, find the things that you really love. I just have lots of ideas that come in, and they all want to be written, and so so short stories let me get many of those ideas out, and so that's what short stories do for me. Is it's fun, and it doesn't take as much time as a novel, and it allows me to explore and enjoy writing many different things. Whereas novels, I love novels because you just because you do. Sometimes it's nice to just spend a lot of time with certain characters and be able to their with a lot more elbow room and space to explore it. So novels are good for that, I think.
Yeah, and it's two different. It's not like short stories are really so much practice. It's a complete different art, I think,
Yeah,
than novels. But there are things that help a lot with short stories that really lend themselves to helping with novels, like learning how to write in scenes and learning how to keep tension up within an arc. Because that's so short stories, you don't have room to lag
yeah,
and
and
let
I
the tension down.
and learning to write short as well is good. I mean, if you just start off writing novels, you may be bloating it with a lot of unnecessary stuff, and or have essentially. Oh, it's like going to a movie. Yeah, that would have made a good TV episode, but they were really stretching it to make it a movie. And sometimes some novels feel like that. Like that was a good concept for a short story, or a novelette, but you were really just padding it out to make it a novel. So if you're writing, learn how to write concisely, then you'll be able to condense more cool stuff into a novel in the same amount of space as if you're just bloating it out. But,
Cool. Um, well, that was pretty much all I had. It's been lovely
okay.
talking with you on a cloudy and rainy, thankfully, Sunday morning here in Seattle. Um,
Yes. Thank you.
so when
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
when is Finn Fancy Necromancy coming out?
Oh yeah, good thing to mention. February of 2015.
Okay.
So not blame me for the collapse of society. I know it seemed coincidentally to start right around that time, but I assure you, my novel had nothing to do with it. February of 2015. Necromancy at a bookstore near you. From
Yeah,
Tor.
support your local independent bookseller or your local public library. Yes, and and support Clarion West. Clarion West is awesome and brings you people like Randy. And thank you so much for talking with us, Randy. And we will speak with you later.
Okay, have a good one. Bye,
Bye,
world.
everyone.